Hey, think you know which way it's going to go? Make your bet at Sports Interaction. Whatever your sport, Sports Interaction has you covered pregame. Live betting on all major sports, and of course, prop bets. Who doesn't love those? Want to bet? Head to sportsinteraction.com/SDPN. 19 plus. Please play responsibly. It's Nailing the Apex with Tim Hauraney, Jesse, and Adam Wylde just hanging out because we love racing. And we've been excited to launch this show. And I think what we're going to do here is do a little bit of like a Drive to Survive reaction each episode. Because one thing that Jesse and I always found ourselves doing when we sit down with Tim, it's like, hey, Tim, we'd really like you to join the network, but actually, can you tell us about this one scene in Drive to Survive? And or can you tell us about, these drivers got into a fight, and can you explain how that works? So we wanted you and your knowledge to get into this, because I think when you're a driver like you are, you look at it a lot differently than we would. And so as fans, Jesse and I want to pep you with questions. So the first episode starts with, Ferrari, the fact that, we're coming off the dregs of the Hamilton, Verstappen, Michael Massey championship, which we will not get into. But then, it's Gunther and Mattia out having wine in wine country in Italy. And my question at first is like, these team principals seem to be sometimes at each other's throats, sometimes best friends.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like there's like 10 guys in the world that can relate to that.
Yeah.
So who's friends on the grid and who's rival?
I would say, okay, from the one I've observed the most, I would say it's Gunther and Frederick Vasseur. Those two have a hilarious relationship where they bust each other up like all the time.
Right.
We were at the U.S. Grand Prix at Circuit of the Americas this past year, and I was sat in on a press conference with Gunther. I think it was Mario Isola, who is the guy from Pirelli Tires, and Frederick Vasseur, who at the time was working for Alfa Romeo. And at the end of it, when they cut the camera and cut the feed or whatever, they stood up and they all put on these Gunther Steiner t-shirts that had like, blank whatever. I'm not a big swearer, but like blank whatever. And they put these on. They took a picture of them together.
Say fucking wankers. Is that what it said?
Yeah, they're like giving each other like a hard time while they're up on the stage, like killing each other, like laughing. And we're all like, I'm just sitting there like eating it up. I'm like, this is great. I'm like, we need to see more of this on television. It's awesome. That's one of the ones that I do notice the most.
Mattia and Gunther seem like good buddies in this scene.
Yeah, they are as well. Gunther
doesn't seem like a hard guy to get along with, though.
It's interesting. Yeah, exactly. It's interesting to like Christian and Toto. That doesn't.
They're rivals.
Yeah. It's like whatever. Oil and water.
It seems like a grudging respect between the two of them. It doesn't seem like hate.
I don't know.
Or am I wrong?
I think episode 2 we see a little bit of the hate.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say like hate, but they're competitors, right? Mm-hmm. And they're competing against each other, and you don't always have to like your competitors. So I'll say that. Yeah. It's Christian does his job. He does it well. Toto does his job in the way he does it, and he does it really well. And there's, to do a team principal job, it's kind of, there's many different ways of doing it, right? Mm-hmm. And, some people don't like Christian Horner at all, but you have to respect the fact that, like, this guy's going to do whatever it takes to make sure his team is winning. Like, in some of these episodes, you can actually see that he's like, hey, if we're going to make a decision on who's number 1 and who's number 2, I'm going to do it. And that's all there is to it. And then you go to, like, Ferrari, and it's like, yeah, I don't know who's number 1 and number 2, but there are points where you have to decide.
Ferrari of last year, it seemed like Mattia's philosophy was nobody's to blame, we're all to blame. And unfortunately, what happened with that is it seemed that nobody took responsibility after a while. Mm-hmm. And that's where they sort of ran into problems, is like, they're denying very obvious problems that they had with their strategy.
You're jumping ahead.
I know.
There's a whole episode we'll do that. So in the opening scene, I thought it was very, very cool that Mattia calls Gunther the main character of the show, the protagonist of Drive to Survive. Yeah. Because if we look at it as, there's a lot of people who don't watch F1 who just watch Drive to Survive, and you see the overarching story. Gunther's kind of the protagonist that goes through it. And I thought that was so cute that the principals themselves recognize this and that this guy's an actual TV star in this reality show that we all watch.
100%. And like, I think they do a great job of showing that. And you make a great point of like how they sort of pepper it in like here and there as you go through.
He's kind of in everything.
Yeah.
You know?
It's a little heavy. Let's throw some Gunther in.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's getting a little too dramatic.
Yeah.
Be a little Gunther.
Look, we've had too much Christian, and then we're gonna.
Gunther's gonna swear.
Yeah.
And it'll be fine.
What's fascinating though is you saw for the first time, I think, every team principal on this season. And if we're talking about team principals right now, obviously we can get to some other ones, but Fred's not on a lot. Franz Tost is not on a lot. There are some guys that seem to relish it, some guys that do not. Is there a reason why somebody like Zac Brown is the face of McLaren and not in this season Andreas Seidl?
It took a long, for one of the things with Zac is it took a lot for McLaren just to get him. Like Formula One wanted Zac to run their show.
Oh,
and
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so for McLaren to get Zac, that was a big deal. I mean, I always kind of think of Zac as like a mad scientist, like in a cartoon, like he got beakers everywhere, right? And his hair is, standing on end. But because he's always got these great PR ideas, like, hey, we're gonna take Fernando Alonso. He's not gonna compete in Monaco. We're gonna send him into the Indy 500. It's like, what?
Yeah, crazy stuff.
It's like a great PR stunt, right?
Yeah.
It's incredible, and that turned out really well for them. But having an individual like Zac, running your team, it's a big get for McLaren, in all honesty. I mean, if you take a look at where they were before he even got there, they were nowhere. And he kind of showed up, and it took some time, but
they had no sponsors. That car was just orange and blue.
That's the huge part of it, right? Like Zac used to sell sponsorship so he could go and drive race cars. So he knows that side of the business really well, which is it's hard to do. It's hard to sell sponsorship within racing, right? You need to understand, and we're going to get really businessy here. Sorry, everyone. You need to understand B2B, B2C. Mm-hmm. What does a company want out of a relationship with a Formula One team, and how can your Formula One team help the company achieve their objectives? You need to understand what that is, and then you got to try and work towards that. There's also that on the business side of things.
I like that. Now,
Zac's really good at it.
And
he's really good at it.
Clearly. I mean, they're unbelievable with that. Now, a scene that I think would have stung Jesse very hard in that opening episode is essentially Mercedes looked like shit before the season started, and people were telling them that. So I want to know what your reaction is watching that, and you're going,
first,
I know.
It's cool when we talked about this principles. It's cool when all the drivers get together as well.
Yes.
This is the day. It's picture day. They're all on the track. All the cars are there, and you see every driver there just walking around talking about all the cars, and they're so blatant about how weird the Mercedes car looks because they didn't understand the rules of how to build the car this year, apparently, or last year, and they showed up with this weird looking car that looked like no other car in the grill, and George has to sit there and try and cover for the engineers and be like, I didn't make it, but I don't know what they did.
I'm new here and I just worked really hard to get here.
It's his first season. I forgot. Last year's first year.
For Mercedes, I mean, at that time, they what they saw in their wind tunnel and CFD, they saw incredible numbers with this zero pod in the car that they brought to the track. They didn't prepare enough for the porpoising phenomenon that was the later. And
every team was affected by it, but
it was. But other teams figured it out, and they were able to kind of get by. With Mercedes, by changing their ride height just a little bit, that really hurt performance even more. So it was kind of okay, we either suffer through the bouncing or we limit the bouncing, but we're also really going to limit performance. And so that was sort of a bit of that trade-off. At the start of the season, I mean, they just got punched in the face. They didn't see that. They didn't see this coming at all. It was tough for them. And for them to go from where they were in Bahrain to where they ended up being in Brazil, I mean, that's a monumental effort to claw back that much performance and get the car somewhat sorted out. But I like the part where I think it was Vettel who was your car looks like someone took Play-Doh and dropped it over top of it or something. There's something along those lines. I'm paraphrasing, obviously, but I laughed so hard at that point because you look at it and the bodywork's all kind of like warped and it's got like no side pods and the floor is all like warped and you're like, okay, that's actually interesting.
Yeah.
It was fascinating for me just to hear them say that out loud on microphone, on camera.
Yeah,
it was great that they're so taken aback by this weird Mercedes that they had to blurt it out there.
And that's what's so great about Drive to Survive. And it's basically like you're in Formula One, cameras are rolling all the time. Like I go walking into the paddock, there's cameras rolling everywhere. They're capturing sound and filming stuff. And it's kind of like, okay, well, you're in the paddock. This is kind of like what you signed up for. And this is what's going to happen. It was interesting because I don't want to compare things. And I know we're getting a little off track, but did you guys watch Breakpoint?
The tennis one?
The tennis one?
I haven't seen it yet.
Only the first episode.
Is it good?
I've enjoyed it so far. The first episode, yeah.
There are points in Breakpoint where, and I like tennis, where it's kind of like, okay, this is sort of staged. Like there's some sit downs where it's a little bit like they put this together and got them to just start talking. That's how I feel with some of the scenes. But then there are other scenes where you've got Nadal warming up and you can just see that, and it's just complete silence. But you just have the video and you're looking at the two of them and you can put the story together yourself because it's just that little bit of access that they gave them. I would like it if they just blew that open even more and just increase that access, because essentially Drive to Survive, what makes it so successful, and we've talked about other seasons, there's some I don't like. I really like this one because you really get behind the scenes access.
I was surprised actually, given because usually what happens with these things is that too much success ruins a good thing, right?
Yep. They start clawing back.
100%. The teams are like, well, like when the Leafs did their Amazon documentary, they say only 30% of what was going to go in made it.
Oh.
30%. What's been amazing about this is every team eventually, after the first season, when it was really about 3 teams, got on board and understood the marketing opportunity, right? How, like, who was Gunther Steiner before Drive to Survive? He was he was still pretty big, but he wasn't big like he's big now. He's a celebrity now. I wonder if, like, without that sort of access, if Mercedes tries to do damage control in any other thing, like, the Toronto Maple Leafs would have been like, oh, don't show that. Like, we don't want our brand. Mercedes had to take that on the chin, right?
Yeah. Like, doors are open, and that's the thing. They're
a worldwide brand.
I think when you watch, for me, this is the way I kind of saw season 3, season 4. That to me sort of felt like a marketing sort of campaigny. But with this season 5, like, you're actually getting like behind, like we were talking before we went to air, like Otmar and Zac, like and we'll get to this, getting together in a room and the microphones are on. It's kind of like, that's like actually like a very private conversation that they cut some of the audio out because they probably were
talking about litigation.
Yeah, they were probably like, hey, you need to take this out because of XYZ. And it's like, okay, well, we'll remove this, but we're keeping this. And it's like,
oh yeah,
to get that type of access is, I don't know a lot of sports that would do it.
With season 5, they've kind of gone back to what it should be, and that's a behind-the-scenes look at a sport that is in and of self reality television.
Yeah,
because no other sport has this thing where these drivers who make tens of millions of dollars every year, are international celebrities, are all competing against each other. And there's only these limited amount of teams, and they're all competing in these spots, and they're all the team principals are fighting behind each other's backs, and it's real life reality TV, and the camera's just being there just needs to capture it.
Yeah.
And if it can capture it and show it, the story writes itself.
Exactly.
And that's what season 5 really shows, is that we see the actual real life F1, which is absolutely fantastic. And that's why everybody got behind it in season 1 and season 2, and that's why it caught on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now,
and with that first race, I forgot Red Bull didn't win.
No,
really?
With how successful that entire year was, where every single race Max or Checo won, I forgot that Ferrari won that first race.
Yeah, because they told the whole story of how that sort of race unraveled, where it was first like Gasly had the fuel line engine issue, and then it sort of trickled into the next Red Bull owned car. I believe it was like either Max or Sergio. No, it was Max.
Max next.
And then it was Sergio, and you kind of just
all of them died.
Yeah, but it was like you don't really need to show that if you're just showing it to random fans, you're actually showing how the actual story unfolded, which was a huge sticking point for the drivers. They were like, you guys aren't telling, like in the season 3, season 4, they were, and that's why Max didn't. That's why Max
he's
didn't
back.
do it. He's in it this time because they agreed, like, hey, we're gonna like do this up proper and tell the full story.
Tell the story
it's great.
properly.
It's great.
Now, lastly, is at the end of the episode, you kind of got the half story of Nikita Mazepin, his father Dmitry Mazepin, and then Uralkali sponsorship being peeled back with the Russian invasion of the Ukraine. And really, I think what they did a great job of is not making it about that, because those two were it seemed like a pretty negative part of the previous season of Drive to Survive. We want a new car made, we want this, we want that. And you felt bad for Gunther, you felt bad for Gene Haas, you felt bad for the engineers on the team. And then all of a sudden, Haas goes, you know what, we're going to lose a pile of money, and we're going to bring Kevin Magnussen back, and he has a fantastic first race, and they finish that race in, I think the team finishes with 3rd place in points, which is amazing.
Yeah, this was the Kevin Magnussen episode.
Yeah,
like this was his hero arc.
What a
of just
comeback.
coming back, and his child might be the cutest child on earth.
Yes.
his little girl in that car at the end after he gets the points. It was his hero arc that first episode, and it was beautiful to see.
How hard is it to come back after a year like that?
Oh, it's really hard. I mean, for Kevin, because he was doing endurance racing, he had dabbled in IndyCar a little bit, and to just basically, I guess what's the word I'm looking for? Basically, you're coming to the conclusion that I'm not an F1 driver anymore, and that's the pinnacle. That's the highest
hard.
I'm going to get to. Now I have to just deal with that. And he makes mention of, like, and I'm paraphrasing obviously with all this, but he makes mention essentially of getting that second chance of coming back to Formula One, and he sees it more of an opportunity where in the past, he probably wasn't the nicest sort of guy around the paddock, which
a little bit fiery,
which I agree with what he's saying, because this time around he was just a different guy. Like, I remember sitting down doing an interview with him in Miami, and just essentially talking to him about, like, hey, like, what's changed, because you seem much different. And he's like, I've just got this great opportunity, and I have to take full advantage of it, and I have to be grateful for the opportunity, and basically enjoy every single day I get to be a Formula One driver. And I was like, good for you.
He's at peace.
Yeah, good for you. And he's incredible talent. I mean, he's super fast.
Absolutely. So it's the episode ends really well with that Magnussen arc, and you can't be not thrilled for Kevin Magnussen seeing that, and you can't not. I think that's the most genuinely happy you see Gunther Steiner in 5 seasons. Like, because there's always like a little bit of, there's tragedy, there's comedy and tragedy. And the Haas team, which I think peaked at 5, they went all the way to 5th place, falls from season 1 to season 4, right? They're dead last.
Yeah, that has to be difficult for a team like that. I mean, obviously, part of their car gets built by Dallara. They do get Ferrari technology. Are they getting the most current Ferrari technology? No. I mean, they're not. But now they've been able to start to create and build a lot of their own parts for the race car. And you've seen this huge push from, like I had said, from 2021 into 2022. And I think that was really important for them to just make sure they got off to a great start. I mean, I didn't think they were expecting it to be that good, though.
No. And it was great.
Yeah.
It's a great start.
Oh, it's awesome. Yeah.
So that sort of sums up episode 1. And I think it was a good sort of setup for the rest of the season.
Yeah.
You kind of felt like, okay, we're in for a good one.
Yeah.
So episode 2, next episode, whenever we're posting it, I don't even know.